I'm going to talk about my process as an artist. I just sat down to do a collage with just like a regular collage in my sketchbook with cut out pictures from magazines. And I started sorting through and looking for images that interested me. And there's a theme to them tonight. That's a common theme for my work. And I'm looking at a lot of images that are in like blue hour or like golden hour right afterwards. So there's a blue and an oranginess to them. And I had a whole series of artworks like this in my grad school experience a couple years ago, and I did paintings, large oil paintings. I kind of messed around with some acrylic, and then what I landed on that I ended up loving was colored pencil drawings on like bumpy paper. So it looked, they ended up, I did them really lightly. I'll post pictures. I did them really lightly and they ended up looking like watercolor. So they're really faded, and it was called the Blue Hour series, and most of my work in grad school was pretty like the first series that I did was about anxiety and like where it originates in the brain. And I was actually looking at the structure of the amygdala, and I was working with a brain image lab that was on campus to understand like the physical anatomy of what I was hoping they'd be like, yep, and that's where that's where all your problems come from. And when I was surprised to discover that they didn't have that much information and there was no like actual parts you could look at in the brain, that like my line of inquiry took a different direction. And but those first pieces about the amygdala were really cool and interesting. They were all black and white, and actually I'll share about those too. So I looked at the amygdala as like an actual thing in our brain, and I got the shape of it, and I was taking other classes aside from like my like core, I guess, is like drawing and painting. And I was taking a ceramics class, and they were teaching us how to make molds for things. And I was just trying to figure out how to like make it work with my like very almost like scientific illustration level, like not level, but just like that style level of drawing. And so I made an amygdala spider because I learned that people who had like at the time like generalized anxiety disorder had more connections going from their brain. And you know, that is also a theme for me, is with like autism being like you make all these more connections. It's so hard to prioritize. So the like natural pruning that comes with brains doesn't really happen. So I made this amygdala, and it was like this big. And I gave it like all these little like branches off. And when it came out, it looked like a little spider. It was so cool. And so I was also taking a photography class at the time. Gosh, I forgot how fun it was to be in school. And then COVID came and like completely chopped my experience in half. The rest of it was online. But I was in a black and white photography class, film photography class. And so I thought to get a drawing, I was going to take photos of my little sculpture I made. And so I took a bunch of these photos, and it like looked so funny. I will post them here too. It looked like I had photographed like a monster in the 1940s. It looked like a crime scene from like a black and white photo era. And so I ended up using those, and I ended up making a drawing from all of these, like from this process of kind of creating one thing to another thing to another thing. And the drawing was cool. But then I started to learn about photo, like light sensitive paper, and I started to make, oh yeah, like I started to expose my little sculpture. Yeah, and that was the first like spider I've made in my career. That wasn't a spider. My last one was a robot that would draw. I made cool shit. I forgot. So I would expose it, and then I would expose like I painted on it with bleach. So it would like lift. So it would be like all black, and then like my little guy would be in white. And then I etched with an X-Acto knife. I was like gonna get my X-Acto knife. I had etched into it, and I made like it looked like tentacles, but it was supposed to be like the connections. And so I did that. And then, like I said, I made a drawing. It was like cool, but, and I'll show that one too, but it was nothing compared to all of the things that I had made to get there. And through that process of like learning how to use a bunch of different media, like learning how to make molds, like that was a lot of time spent in the ceramics lab or studio, you know, learning how to do something through like trial and error. And it was like delicate. And then learning how to work with the photo lab and black and white film without that like kind of instant knowledge that you got an image that you liked. Like you had to wait, but it was like such a special process of like developing photos. So that was my first series of like grad school, and the next series was about I think this was before my Blue Hour series. It was like I showed it on whatever. It was about depression and my experience with depression, and I took pictures of my bed sheets, and then I drew them very like intricately on that like paper, the watercolor paper, so it was like bumpy. It was almost like I made it harder for myself, or it was like an automatic texture that showed up. But why I did those pieces that way was because I was looking to find a art project at that time in grad school, so I felt pressure. And mind you, I was also teaching full time too. And so I drew these, and why they felt very like therapeutic for me was because this was something that, unlike with the projects before, like I knew what the outcome would be. I knew how to draw. I knew what I needed to do to get this image, and the concept for the image was strong enough that I myself allowed the like lag in thinking. I don't know how else to say that, but yeah. So I got to the Blue Hour series, and I needed a project that really made me appreciate things in life. And I thought about the period of the day that I feel most calm, and it's like right now when it's like straight up blue outside, because it's still light but it's not dark, and it's blue and the sun's gone down. And at that time on campus, which I was just like so grateful to have like a space like campus that felt like dedicated to my art practice. I was so happy to be in school. There was like the orange lights of like the street lights and stuff around campus, and the blue. And so any images I took had those extremes, and those are complementary colors, as I every year taught my students in high school. I started to draw these as like really light, ephemeral kind of like almost like a dream images on colored or with colored pencil. And those ones were my favorite, and they were worked in the same way that my drawings with the Refuge series, the Depression series, where they were like on bumpy paper, and I knew what I was drawing. I was recreating a photo I took, and I was like playing with color. And so I explained my process and how I used to make art, and that was several of my series in college and grad school. I went from 2018 till 2021. And then I had my son in 2021, right after I graduated. And I got married in 2020. Yeah, so like a lot of things happened at the same time. But that's like how I liked things, I think. Throughout my life, I've thrived when there's been utter chaos. I'm going to record a separate video so I can share about my art process and what I just learned about it right now in trying to do something new. Next video.